We're going to be talking about some source spelling hacks for K-2. We have 10 different spelling hacks that Megan's going to talk about today. I'm Jenny, and I'm the creator of the Shifting to SOAR membership, and Megan is part of the team. She does a lot of the presentation that we do live every month, and she does creates a lot of the resources that are inside of the SOAR and the Decodable Readers Vault. So, all right, Megan, I'm going to give it to you.
My name is Megan, and I'm going to share some spelling hacks with you this live call. If you have any questions at all, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can unmute and we can have a little conversation. But the main thing is really just going to dive into these 10 hacks that are really helpful for K-2 students. And these spelling hacks, or you want to call them spelling rules, you might hear me kind of interchange the words. They can help your children, your students, decode, encode, and just feel confident as readers and writers. So today we will discuss the benefit of teaching spelling rules. And when I say spelling rules, it's not, again, just for spelling. It's also for decoding. It's helpful for both encoding and decoding. And so we'll review 10 of those hacks or those rules. And then I'll show you where you can access the anchor charts that we have for all of these rules. Again, if there's any questions at the end, we can answer those then. And then Jenny will share the monthly challenge. Okay. So why teach spelling rules, or why teach these hacks to your students? One of the biggest misconceptions is that English spelling is random, but that's actually incorrect. English spelling is predictable and it's logical. And when students know the pattern, it's easier for them to decode, encode, and just be more confident with their reading. Teaching spelling rules helps children with pattern recognition instead of memorization. So this supports orthographic mapping, which is one of the big things that we talk about with this shift in science of reading. We don't want our students to just be memorizing words. We want them to really work on orthographic mapping and mapping those words and recognizing the letter patterns and the sounds and mapping those into their long-term memory. And then it also supports structured literacy instruction. And again, that's just another big push for the science of reading, is that we want to make sure that we're having structured literacy blocks in our classroom. So the first one is called the Floss Rule. So you may have heard this before, maybe you haven't. So the Floss Rule is a great early on rule to teach your students. And basically, if you have a one-syllable word with a short vowel, we double the letters, and then you can see right here, F, L, S, or Z at the end. So for example, we have the words hill, puff, miss, buzz. And there are some exceptions, of course, and these are mostly high frequency words. Overall, this rule is extremely dependable. Your students will be able to use this rule, I would say, like probably 90% of the time, 95% of the time. So again, you can see these exceptions right here. And if you go on to, if you Google, why doesn't the word if follow the Floss Rule, you can kind of see the etymology of that word and why it has that specific reasoning behind it. And so you can kind of explain that with your students too. But again, when you teach this rule to your students, one of the biggest things is asking them, is it one syllable word and does it have a short vowel? Okay, then yes, you want to double that last word. And I think that the rule is probably pretty common to kind of just introduce to kindergarten and first grade students. It's a really easy, like I said, rule. And there's tons of different little sayings and things that you can kind of put in with all of these rules that I'm going to be sharing with you today. If you just Google, the Floss Rule, you'll see blog posts or, sample anchor charts and things that you can, look at and help kind of bring more of like your own personality into it. But I will share the anchor charts at the very end of the presentation. Okay. All right. I'm not quite sure. It got cut off, but this is supposed to say versus TCH for the ch sound. So this is another really easy rule to teach to those younger students. A lot of first and kinder scopes and sequences do teach digraphs. And so this is another really common one that you'll come across with your students. And so, a lot of your students learn that CH makes a ch sound. But then they also learned that there's the trigraph, TCH, and that also makes the ch sound. So, which one do we use? So we use TCH after a short vowel in a one-syllable word. So it's very similar to that floss rule again. You have that short vowel, and then at the end of it, you want to add that TCH. So for example, we have the words catch, fetch, which, hutch. So you can see that the letter U is short, and then we're going to use that TCH to kind of bind that ch sound to that word. And then pretty much using CH for the rest of, different rules that you can think of. So if you have a multisyllabic word, you'll use CH. If you have a long vowel, a vowel team, or an R-controlled vowel, you will use CH. And then if you have, a consonant in between the vowel and the ch sound at the end of a word, you will use CH. And then at the beginning of a word, we use CH. So you can see some examples down here. Lunch, coach, we have the vowel teams. And then for branch and lunch, we have that vowel consonant and then the ch sound. And again, we have some exceptions, and you can teach those as, high frequency words to your student. Okay, the third rule is a lot of our students, in kindergarten, first and second grade, they work on the CK digraph as well. And so once they learn the K sound or the C sound, then they learn the CK sound. They're like, well, when do I use what for the K sound? And so again, this kind of is very similar to the CH and TCH rule and the floss rule. There's that short vowel piece with the one syllable word. So we use CK after a short vowel at the end of a one syllable word, and then we use K for everything else. So for example, you can see the CK examples: duck, back, pick. There's that short vowel before the K sound. And then for K, we have this diphthong, the sound. We have a consonant in between the K sound and the short vowel. So we'll use K at the end. We have a long vowel, and then again, that diphthong. So again, it's really just asking your students to think, do I hear a short vowel right before the K sound? Or is there something in between, or is that vowel different than the short sound that I'm familiar with? And so that will help them, kind of distinguish between using the CK or the K. And then we also have the CK rule for the beginning K sound. So we don't use CK at the beginning of a word. We use either C or K. And so teaching this to our students, we want to really, bring in a good visual. And so there's one that we use, and it's the Kite rule. And I'll show you that anchor chart here. Actually, yeah, I'll show you that at the end as well. And it's a really good visual for the students so that they can kind of see, okay, I remember that I'm going to use K before E, I, or Y. So they have a picture of a kite. And then I use C before A, O, U, or other consonants. Like if we have like a consonant blend like crab, we use the C before that R blend. So you can see here those examples. And again, bringing in that visual for your students of having that cat and kite is really helpful. This was one of my favorite spelling rules to teach my students, the cat-kite rule, because I feel like they got a really good handle on it, and it was really helpful for them, especially my very early learning spellers. And so, just having that anchor chart posted, I had something very similar to what we have available in the membership. It was just really helpful for the students to have. So let me just bring it up. All right, so in our membership, this is what the cat-kite rule anchor chart looks like. So you can see that there's a cute little saying at the top. C goes with A, O, and U. K goes with the other two. I have heard it be said, K takes I, Y, and E. C takes the other three as well. So there's different ways that you can teach your students kind of that one little rhyming pattern to help them. Okay, so the next rule is the soft C and soft G rule. And I actually, when I made the anchor chart to go into the membership, I actually just put in the put in the two sounds of C and the two sounds of G. Where, we teach our students the hard sounds first when we teach them the their letter sounds. So the hard C is the K sound and the hard G sound is the G sound. So it's what they're, familiar with. And then as they move forward with their phonics skills, that's when we learn that there's a second sound for C and there's a second sound for G. And so this kind of goes hand in hand with that CK rule, the Kite rule, because it has the students looking at that vowel again and thinking, okay, well, what vowels are with which letter and what sound is it going to make? So for the soft C sound, that is the S sound. That's when we have the C before the letters E, I, or Y. And that's the same for G. So when we have the soft G, we have the J sound and we have the letters I, E, or Y that follow the letter G. So you can see those examples right here. Cent, city, cycle, giraffe, giant, gym. And giraffe is not really a decodable word that your students will, necessarily be able to decode right away, but it is a word that they're familiar with because a lot of, students are, into animals or if they've been to the zoo. So it is, still helpful to, talk about, why there's that J sound for the word giraffe. And just a little teaching tip right here. You can kind of add in this little rhyme. E-I-Y makes C and G soft and shy. So it just kind of helps them solidify that spelling hack to kind of make it easier for them to learn. Number 6. So in English, our words do not end in the letter J. So D-G-E sound after a short vowel, and then we use the letters G-E after anything else. So you can see those examples right there. And again, this can kind of go with those rules that I've already talked about. You remind your students about how we look for that short vowel. Okay, do we see a short vowel before we hear that J sound? Okay, if we don't, then we're going to use GE. But if we do hear that, we need to add in that D, G, and E. Number 7, this is a plural word kind of rule. It should say when to use S or ES. So most words, we simply add S to make it plural. But when the word ends with that hissing or buzzing sound, these are the letters S, X, Z, C, H, S, H, we add ES. So for example, foxes, buses, dishes, buzzes. So you can teach your students to listen for those hissing or buzzing sounds. So when we hear the word fox, the letter X makes that X, that hissing sound. So we're going to add that ES. And that adds an extra syllable to the word. So you can kind of teach that to your students of, that's an extra clue that it needs an ES if there's going to have an extra syllable. With the word buses, bus, again, we have that hissing sound at the end, dish, and then buzz, we need that ES. This is a very common spelling rule that, as you're doing like writer's workshop and things, you might just kind of add it in while you're like maybe modeling something too. I know from my own experiences, if I was writing about foxes or something, I kind of talk about it then. So you don't have to necessarily use these spelling hacks in your reading block. You can pull them in whenever and use these anchor charts for reading or writing. I think it's something that is really a great connection for our students to realize, okay, I'm learning to read these words and I'm also going to transfer that into my writing. And I'm watching my teacher do that in her writing as well too. All right, number 8. This is the rabbit rule. And this is one that I don't think you necessarily would teach to your kindergarten students. This is probably more like, maybe first grade, most likely second grade too, especially when you start talking about the syllable types. And so the rabbit rule is how you spell some two-syllable word. It can also be considered like a way to divide words into syllables. So like a hack for that as well. So in a two-syllable word with a short vowel in the first syllable, that consonant sound in the middle is doubled. So for example, the word rabbit, we know that the A is a short sound, so we're going to double that B. You can see the word muffin and the word common. So again, just having your students listen for the vowel sound in the first syllable. And then if they're, saying, yeah, it's a short vowel, we're going to double that. And then this also is helpful for when you're teaching multisyllabic decoding skills, because you're able to, look at this word and go, okay, well, I see two consonants. So I know that there's going to be a short sound. And, you talk about the syllable types, about how this is closed, and then this is also closed syllable. And so when we put that together, we have two closed syllables, rabbit. We're almost done. Okay, the number 9 rule is the sounds of Y. Something I thought was really cute. I've never said this to my students before, but I did. I found it on the internet when I was researching, is to say that Y is a chameleon. It likes to steal vowel sounds. So we know that the letter Y has its consonant sound, but then it also has vowel sounds that it will take on. So we teach students the long E sound for Y, the long I sound, and then Y also will say the short I sound. So for example, in a two-syllable word, the long E, or the Y, will have the long E sound. Funny, happy, puppy. And this is a first grade in I believe the U-Fly scope and sequence, and the other scope and sequence that we use, IMSE. This is a lesson that they have. So they learn to read those words in first grade according to those scopes and sequences. So this is a, great rule to teach your students, and it helps them with their writing as well. And then, so that long I sound for Y will be in one-syllable words. So cry, fly. Then we have the beginning of the word, the consonant sound, yellow. And then in the middle of a word, Y will sometimes say the letter I. And I think I just saw a question about sharing these slides. And yes, Jenny does. She puts the video in the membership as well as the presentation. And then also I'll show you where you can access the anchor charts. So you're able to print those out and be able to use them right away. Last but not least, and there are many more hacks. These were just the 10, I guess, most common that I kind of was looking or finding when I was researching. This is the VE rule. English words do not end in the letter V. So to keep that V safe, we add an E to the end. So it's a little different than the magic E. We can just call it a safety E in a sense. And so essentially we want to keep that V safe. So we attach that E. It's, very common to see words like have, give, love. And simply, it's not changing the vowel sound. So you can teach your students that this is different than the magic E. It's not giving that magic E for the word have. And this is a high frequency word. I know that a lot of scopes and sequences will teach too. Give, if. So again, we have that I is short. It's not dive. And then love as well. We have that. So again, just, teaching it a little bit different. I think I just saw something else too, which is, I love that. Yeah, if the E wasn't there, the V would tip over. Yeah, that's great. I love that. So where can you access these? And when you go to the membership, you'll see this as your home screen. And if you scroll down, you'll find anchor charts are right here. So this teacher right here with her little anchor chart, if you click on that, it will bring you to our anchor charts. And right now we have a few I didn't talk about in the call, but then you will also see the 10 that are in there. So there will be 2 different formats. If you want just the plain 2D clip art, you can use that. Otherwise, we will also have the 3D images. You should be able to see the anchor charts in the PowerPoint. All right, so here is an example of the VE rule. So we have the rule, and then with pictures and words as an example. So you can present this to your students, on your screen, your projector, or you can just, have it printed out as well. I also have kind of used these as interactive notebooks as well before. If you print 2 on a page, you can cut them out so they're smaller, and then they can fit inside of their students' writer's notebooks. You could do that as well. So for each anchor chart, there will be that 2D and then that 3D image. So it'll be the exact same thing, but it's just we decided to take the images and turn them into 3D characters to kind of just go along with our new branding. Here's the sounds of Y. So you'll see the 4 different sounds with the picture for each one. That key word can be really helpful for your students, think of puppy. It's it's a 2-syllable word. There's the E sound at the end. So this word candy would also, have that. So you can kind of make those connections and use those pictures. And if you do decide to put these inside of, your students' notebooks, they can add more words to it as well. And there's an example of the 3D image chart. Here's the rabbit rule. So you can again see the rule that you can explain to your students, and then some picture examples. And we've got the S plural sounds. So picture examples to go along with it. And we've got the DGE rule, K ending sound, and the cat kite have been an anchor chart that we've already introduced to the membership. So those are already in there. They're not in this document. I did show you the cat kite one, but the floss rule is in there. And then the sounds of C and G. So I'm going to go back to the presentation. If there are any questions, now would be a great time to ask them.
We are going to go ahead and end our call for tonight. So thank you, Megan. You did a great job. Thanks everybody for coming.